Let's go!
Welcome, everybody, to the Counterclipping Show for March 28th, 2022. This is show number 67, and we are back on the regular schedule again, which we will be on next week, although I'm not sure how I'm going to run that show, either from Buckeye Game Fest or I'll just be back here. It's actually more likely that I'll do it from here. So, we will get some video from Buckeye Game Fest, just not Monday, and probably not Tuesday either. So, I'd like to welcome everybody. First of all, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the thumbs up button and all that stuff. We're going to talk about medieval wargames tonight. Medieval battles games specifically, that's a much bigger space than like medieval operational, in which there's very little, and even medieval strategic, in which there's some stuff, but not really that much. So I think battles is what I would like to talk about tonight, and this is not my area of expertise, so I will be soliciting suggestions from you, the viewers. So we are drinking. So on Friday, so normally we play OCS on Thursdays, but our man in Amsterdam, Fucko, was not available, so we did some stuff anyway, but we didn't get very much done. But since he was in Chicago and listened to the show, he was kind enough to stop at Binny's and pick me up a bottle of the Bowmore 15. So this is what's sold as Bowmore 15 sherry cask or Oloroso cask. It's the same stuff I had in Seattle. It's really good. It's $100 a bottle plus whatever tax in whatever place you can get it. You can't get Bowmore in Ohio. So we're drinking that tonight. So thank you, Fucko. It's really good. It's, I think, gonna end up hitting my top 10 scotches list, actually. Crusader Kings 2 is definitely strategic, but I struggle, and we can talk about that. I struggle to consider it a war game in the sense that I mean when I say war game. And we are clipping For Lost Battles, one of the two new releases from OSG, the Operational Studies Group, and designer Kevin Zucker. Why are we not clipping Napoleon or Bonaparte in the Quadrilateral, you ask? Well, it's already clipped. That's why. So we are going to... And I think I need to go through my library of Napoleonics battles games to make sure that that all the counters are sufficiently well organized. We're not doing that on camera. We are clipping For Lost Battles tonight. And this is a pretty big game. There's an unboxing coming. The unboxing for Napoleon or Bonaparte in the Quadrilateral will be coming on Thursday, and the For Lost Battles reprint. And this is a second edition of this game in a fancy new box. So we will tasting notes on the Bowmore. It is peaty as you'd expect. It's an Islay whiskey, right? So Islay is one of the islands off the west coast of Scotland, and it's its own whiskey producing region. And not everything that comes from Islay is really heavily peated, but it has that reputation. And not quite all, but a lot of the really heavily peated scotches come from Islay. And Bowmore is one of the distilleries on Islay. It's owned by Morrison Bowmore. And like I said, the only Bowmores I've had in the past have been like the really, really low-end stuff, and they are not very good. This is very good. It's very... I get a lot of stone, and it's finished. It's at least sherry finished. Does it actually tell me that? It says sherry cask finish, which tells me that it is aged for most of the 15 years, not in a sherry cask, in something else, possibly in a variety of different things. But it does have, now they're allowed to put caramel color in scotch, but I suspect that the color here is mostly coming from the sherry cask. It's very stone fruit forward. If you strongly dislike peaty scotches, I don't think you'll like this particularly. It's not super peaty by my standards, but like by my standards, super peaty is like Lefroy or maybe Ardbeg and maybe Kalila, and maybe Lagavulin. Those are the standard expressions that I think are super peaty, and this is less peaty than that. As Scotch ages, the peatiness will mellow out. So 15 years. So this is why a lot of like stuff that you'll see like Lefroy is usually comes in around 10 or 12 years, and sometimes younger than that. I've got a or had. I think I drank it all. I had a Kalila that was like 7 years old, and whew, it was a bit on the rough side. But I really like strongly peated whiskey, so I really like it. But this is not incredibly peaty, but it's just as peaty as something like. I hate to compare it because it's mellower. It's more medicinal and less iodine-y, if that makes any sense. So extremely happy with this stuff, to say the least. So, I will leave it to the audience to make the Will Smith jokes. Feel free. I didn't watch the Oscars last night, and I'll tell you what I was busy moaning about last night. But I did see the clip. So feel free to indulge yourselves. Just be gentlemen about it, okay? Don't say anything that will embarrass me or you or cause you to be ejected. So it is possible. I'll give you my opinion on it because, somebody's going to ask. It is possible for everyone involved to be wrong. I am comfortable saying that that's probably true here. So, but I'm also a fan of consequences. And sometimes if you say the wrong thing to the wrong person, you're going to get slapped in the mouth. Not that I'm excusing that. I'm just telling you, those are potential consequences for lipping off to the wrong person in the wrong place at the wrong time. So, anyway, let's say hello before we get any farther in here to Bayonet Brandt of the Armchair Dragoons, William Aarons, Purple Norseman, Christopher Prest, Chad Canady, Jeff Beeler, Alan Salazar, Achilles, Iggy Cricktal, Carl Creeder from the Wargame Boot Camp, Vince Ree, Tom Borman, John Longshore is in the house, Terrence Bonham, Jeff Anderson, Peter Rushton, William Aarons, I think we got you already, John Clark, Manders, H. Tuna, Joe Faust from miserable Akron, Canton area, BC Games from Kansas, Daniel Silverthorne, Brian Gash, David Imperato, Lind Pratt. It got cold here pretty quickly. It's going to heat up to the 70s again in the next 2 days. James Whitmer, Rudy Amandaris, Charles Latora, Purple Norseman, if I didn't get you already, Mike Anthony, Stephen Roberts, Mark McNair, Stigler is in the house, Jeffrey Wesovich, Patrick from Patrick's Tactics and Tutorials, Martin Sample from New England, Alan Salazar, we got you. John Madison from sunny, probably, Colorado. Tim Zales, Fucko, the man of the hour. David Zell, Jason W. E4 Airman, Corey Hanlon, Daniel, William Bird, Joe Perez, if I didn't get you, the Command Tent. Let's see. Jacob Guernsey, welcome back. Haven't seen you in a while. Mr. Ghost Butter, welcome to the stream. I did catch your comment. I just didn't catch your name until just now. E4 Airman, I got you already. William Bird, Michael Kirk, Tony from Tony's Board Life, GT Pony Rider. I think we got everybody. So I've got this thing that I can pull up that will give me the participants, but it's like half the people who are participating, and I don't understand why that feature sucks. So so we are going to obviously mention Men of Iron, and that's going to be, kind of where my experience in medieval battle games kind of begins and ends unless you start venturing into the territory of fantasy. Stigler is right. This Accursed Civil War is part of the Musket and Pike series. Now, it's my understanding that both of those series kind of forked off of Great Battles of History, and you can kind of see it in Men of Iron, not which I've played, and I haven't played this Accursed. I haven't played Musket and Pike. I would consider, and feel free to argue with me on this, I would consider Musket and Pike to be a post-medieval or Age of Reason series, and it's highly regarded. Half-Ass Gaming, welcome back. Roberto Sanchez, welcome back as well. Dale Brady, you have missed very little so much. Dune did win a bunch of technical awards and didn't win any of the acting awards or any of what you'd consider the major awards. I didn't really pay that much attention to it, to be honest, other than watching Will Smith slap Chris Rock in the face 7 or 8 times in a row. William Bird is enjoying a Skull Splitter Ale. I've never had that, but I think I've had other stuff from the Orkney Brewing Company, which does occasionally make it over here. So I did a review of Dune, and I did really like it. So if you want to watch that, go ahead. I have no idea what their views on that are, since this is not a movie review channel. So, Findle 70, I would not compare this to Talisker, actually. And I like Talisker a lot. So Talisker is from the Isle of Skye, which is another one of those islands off the west coast of Scotland. But the only one that gets its own region is Islay. Now, there's been talk for years about there being an island region, which would cover places like the Isle of Jura, the Isle of Skye, the Orkneys. There's 2 distilleries up in the Orkneys, Highland Park and Scapa. I've had Highland Park, and I like it. I have not had the chance to have Scapa. It's supposed to be pretty good. So, I talked about this last week, but I'll go over it again. The only Bowmores I've had are Bowmore Legend, which is a low-end, non-age statement Bowmore, and McClellan's, which is made by Bowmore, and it's a young Bowmore. And they both have sort of that wangy off taste that I don't like and you can't really get rid of. This may still have that off taste, but in this case, I find the overall effect to be extremely pleasant. I'm definitely getting some, notes of things like stone fruits like cherries and things like that, and maybe some shortbread notes as well. It's a bit woody, but not very woody. It's just really good. Now, this stuff's bottled at 43%. 43% is one of those places where I might want to put water in it, and I might not. I did put a tiny amount of water in this time. I had previously had it completely neat with no water, and it was still highly drinkable at that time. So I guess Norman Conquest. So if you didn't catch last week's show, there is a new Volume 5 in the Men of Iron series up for pre-order as of a couple of days ago called Norman Conquest. I think it's got 7 battles in it from all over the Norman period, from like Vikings coming down and doing bad stuff to Hastings and Stamford Bridge are both in there. Those are both reasonably interesting battles. I'm not sure how they'll play, but very curious to see that volume. And Stigler says it's 2 P500 orders short, so it's going to make its number probably tomorrow. So I would call Talisker no more than, and I like Talisker a lot actually, I would consider it medium peat. I wouldn't consider it a heavy peat, but if you don't like peat, then you're probably going to find it overwhelming. I hilariously, many years ago, this is probably close to 20 years ago now, I first tried Oban, which is not from Islay or the Isles, but it is from that coast. It's on that west coast of Scotland, so it shares a lot of the characteristics of an Islay or Island whiskey. And I remember trying it, back in the day at Pennsic, thinking, oh my God, it's like I'm drinking burning tires. It was absolutely overwhelming. And I didn't dislike it even at the time, but to me, that was extraordinarily heavily peated. And so it's hilarious to taste it again now and find out that it's really kind of a medium peat. I'd put it and Talisker in the same general ballpark. And I really like both of them. Oban and Talisker are both very good. So BAR is Battles of the Age of Reason. It is a series that is kind of a fork of La Bataille, but it is from, I think all the games in the series are from Clash of Arms. And it's got a good reputation, and it avoids a lot of the problems that one associates with La Bataille, like having 75 different rule sets. It's relatively heavy, however, and relatively high granularity, or I guess low granularity. It's I think another battalion scale game. Ronald Nicholson from Newark, Ohio, welcome back. We are going to get to Great Medieval Battles, I think. And don't forget Art of Siege too. Is a couple of those, not all of them, but a couple of those Art of Siege games fit into the medieval period as well. But that box is all over the place. One of them is the Siege of Sevastopol from the Crimean War, which is definitely not medieval. So, I mean, we've been kind of back and forth between this show and the show with Dan about, what is medieval, right? I'm going to somewhat randomly say that I think medieval falls between the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 453 or whatever it was BC, or the sack of Rome. That's not necessarily contingent upon the fall of the last Western Roman Emperor. They're two different events. But something like that. So somewhere in the 400s to, what do we say, the start of the Italian War. So roughly about 1400, when, I forget which battle it is, but one of those early battles in the Italian Wars is one of the first battles where gunpowder has a decisive effect. It had been used before that, but it had a decisive effect for the first time in is it one of the Wars of the League of Cambrai, something like that. So Men of Iron, let's talk about that. So it's a Richard Berg designed system, but it's, if you consider Richard Berg to be a designer best known for his bloat, then you're going to be pleasantly surprised by Men of Iron because it's quite easy to play. There has been talk of somebody doing a new version of Kingmaker for some time. I know it's in the works. I know somebody who is working on it, but I don't know what the prospectus is for getting that published. So the Men of Iron series started with Men of Iron, moved on to Volume 2, which is Infidel, which is stuff in the Crusades, then went to Blood and Roses, which is Wars of the Roses, and then Volume 4 is Arquebus, which is the Italian Wars. So I guess if we use Men of Iron as our basis, then we are saying that the Italian Wars are the end of the medieval period. I personally would put it before, but I'm not going to argue with Richard Berg. I haven't played Arquebus, but I have played Blood and Roses, and I do like the system a lot. It's pretty clean. It's easy to play. It's easier to play than GBOH, at least regular GBOH, not necessarily simple GBOH. But I don't think simple GBOH is all that much easier to play than regular GBOH. There are reasons to prefer it, but I don't favor those reasons necessarily. Stigler says anything SPI is worth checking out. I mean, and on paper, I agree with that, but not all of them are necessarily worth going and buying either. Great Medieval Battles is, it's got 4 battles in it, one of which is an actual fantasy battle. One of which is the Black Prince. There's a Tamerlane, and I'm trying to remember what the 4th one was. But the King Arthur battle is a straight fantasy battle, so you're really only getting 3 in there. Now, Devil's Horseman, you'd put that in the medieval period too, right? That's the Mongols, and it is a GBOH game. So if you want Mongol battles that are more detailed than Men of Iron is going to give you, then Devil's Horseman is unfortunately out of print, so you're going to have to go run it down at third-party prices. So bear that in mind. Now, the first 3 of those Men of Iron volumes, Men of Iron, Infidel, and Blood and Roses, were re-released in the Men of Iron Tri-Pack, which is another one of those tremendous value-heavy GMT multi-packs. I forget what the retail is on that, but for the amount of replay value that's in there, or play value that's in there, I think you're getting a good value for the dollar. There is also an additional battle in the box that was in C3I. That's Agincourt, too, so it's not just like any random additional battle. There's also another Battle of Wakefield that showed up in C3I later on, and that's not included in it, but I have mine in there. And then Arquebus is Volume 4. I feel like Men of Iron has enough meat to it to be satisfying without necessarily feeling bloated. I think it's a very good balance. Agincourt is actually a really tough battle to simulate and make a decent game out of it, to be fair. Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it entry level as such, but I consider it pretty easy to play. The rulebook's relatively straightforward. Now, Musket and Pike I'd consider post-medieval, and I haven't played it, so I don't have anything really super non-vacuous to say about it, so there's that. There's a chance that I think Devil's Horseman might get redone. I don't know. I mean, they've reprinted other GBOH volumes that like, well, Chariots of Fire, which is another one of the oddball ones, I think. By oddball, I mean that it's not like Greek or Roman battles. That's on P500 right now, and I think that's probably made its number. I could be wrong about that. Mander says he wishes that they'd redo Devil's Horseman in the Men of Iron system. That's not a bad idea. So I'm just really happy that somebody is picking up Men of Iron and is going to continue to work on that system, because I think it's a really good system. There's also, and I know it's been mentioned, and I missed who said it, but Prestog's Master Pack from SPI, back very early SPI. Well, not about very early, but pretty early. I think 72, 73. That's five games, I think. Some of which are medieval. There's at least one of them is ancient. I've looked at the rules for Prestogs. I think it's fairly primitive, and not, primitive topic. I think mechanically, I think it's relatively primitive. So, and it goes for kind of a lot of change if you run it down. So, I mean, if you are interested in medieval battles at the tactical level today, and you don't want to take the trouble to run down out of print stuff, and there's a lot of one-shot stuff, right? So, we could talk about, there's a Capriti Bridge, for example, game from S&T back in the day, which has a very dire reputation, by the way. But John C. from the sunny Philippines is back. Thank you for coming back, John. I appreciate it. And there is at least one Scotland versus England battle in Men of Iron, in the tri-pack. I forget where it falls exactly, but I think it's in the volume 1. There's like a couple 100 years war battles in there. There's at least one England versus Scotland, and there is at least one England versus the Spanish, as I recall. Or maybe it's the French versus the Spanish, but I know the Spanish is in there. John C. mentions Onward Christian Soldiers, which I do have and which I have played. It's been a long time. So that is a game on the Crusades. It's a Richard Berg. It's not a battle game, right? It's about the Crusades in general. And in this case, I think it's the first through third or fourth Crusades. So, in my opinion, if we're talking about the Levantine Crusades, the Crusades, launched to Jerusalem to recapture or hold Jerusalem, I think there were two interesting ones, and they're both covered by Onward Christian Soldiers. The first Crusade, where this gigantic Crusader army just kind of shows up and wins several big battles against the then ruling Muslim powers, and creates from that cauldron the Crusader states, including the kingdoms of Jerusalem and Antioch and other places like that. And then parts of those get overrun, and there's a second crusade, which is less interesting. And then the third crusade is the crusade that everybody knows about with Richard the Lionhearted and Saladin and all that stuff. And that's another interesting one. For my money, I think the first crusade game, I think, is the most interesting one, because it's the multiplayer one in Onward Christian Soldiers. I am aware, and Berg even talks about this in the designer's notes, that the song Onward Christian Soldiers is like a Victorian period song. So everybody knows that. He just liked it as a title. So he, did that and ran with it. We're making pretty good progress here. I don't know if we'll be finished with this tonight, but we're making pretty good progress. There's actually, this is 1813 in the Dresden campaign. So the piece density is relatively high in this particular volume. Much less so in Bonaparte and the Quadrilateral, which is very early, pre-French Empire battles. So now, for operational medieval, we'll at least get this out of the way. And we talked about this a little bit on Friday. Kingdom of Heaven, I haven't played yet. It does look nice, and it is on my list of things to play. But if you are after operational medieval, then there is very little in that space. However, the good news is, if you're interested in operational medieval, and operational, as I've talked about many times, is kind of my sweet spot for wargaming, Then Musket and Pike not only has several things on order already. I think the 5th just hit pre-order. That's Henry, and that's, of course, Henry the 5th. But there's, a variety of other things coming up as well. There's Inferno, which is sometime in the Italian Wars. There's Plantagenet, which is War of the Roses, or Wars of the Roses, as the case may be. So there's going to be kind of a lot to pick from in that series. And I'm very curious to see what ends up becoming of it. I think we're going to empty this sheet right now. So I do have a marker tray for the Library of Napoleonic Battles series, and one of these days on the Counter Clipping Show we'll be clipping Arquebus, because I haven't clipped it yet. I have clipped Men of Iron, and I had a bit of a difficult time fitting it all back in the box. Now, Nevsky's the one that's out, and I know that some people have had some kind of issues, I will say issues maybe connecting with Nevsky. In part, I think that's because the mechanics are kind of unusual, innovative, you might say. And in part, it's because it's there's not like any games on that topic. I won't say none, but it ain't many. And there's a learning curve, not due to difficulty or complexity as such, but due to it has unconventional mechanics for a war game, especially an operational war game. So I've always pronounced it Plantagenet because they were French. That's why. So they spoke French. They were French. So we're not Frenchifying anything, or French-frying anything. A lot of people don't like the cover art for Nevsky. It doesn't bother me. It's not like it's different, and I can sympathize with whoever made the decision that maybe Volko, I don't know, that they wanted it to be different and not look like every other GMT game. And I think that is itself laudable, even if maybe that cover doesn't work quite as well as we might like. The interior, however, the board, the cards, the pieces, all that stuff are all gorgeous. So I'll take, if I have to choose, I'll take an ugly box and beautiful components over a beautiful box of ghastly components any day. So the subject of war, Asian subjects of say, we'll call it, I guess, ancient and medieval Asia, is going to be outside the scope of this discussion tonight, just because it deserves its own show, right? And actually, for that matter, deserves a guest that knows what the hell they're talking about when it comes to that kind of stuff, and that is possibly not me. So, well, maybe definitely not me. Now, there's the Crusades, which is, Stig was right, it is a Berg game, and it's an old S&T game. And I'm going to say it probably is worth a look, but part of that is, frankly, you can get it quite cheap, because it's not that well regarded. So if you want to take a poke at it, maybe it's worth your time. I actually have a copy sitting over here in the corner. So I may bust it out at some point just for the sake of exploration. But at this point, I have rather a lot of exploration to be exploring. So I do like the Almoravid cover, I will tell you that. So I don't want to Marty, I don't want to badmouth Roger, but Roger's got a distinctive look and has, kind of stuck very, very closely to that look for quite a long time. And that look has become very closely associated with GMT. So we're now starting... Richard Ing, welcome to the stream. So we're now starting to see more... And, this may be just because they're putting tons of games out and Roger doesn't have the ability to do covers for 37 games a year anymore. Doug Sunseth mentions that, first of all, Doug, welcome back. There is a great deal to the Norse diaspora, as Doug puts it. And you could fill 3 games with that topic, to be honest. I mean, if you got to pick 7 battles is pretty good for 1 box, I'm going to be satisfied with that. But if they want to do a Norman Conquest Volume 2, I'll be perfectly happy to do that, to buy that too. And furthermore, there is more than enough material to fill such a volume. So, Jason W. says, people don't like the Nevsky cover. Have we seen the Pacific War cover? Wargames have bad cover art, and Nevsky tried to be bold. He likes it. Nevsky definitely tried to be something different, and I'm not sure it was effective. I like traditional Wargame covers, right? I like a lot of Redmond Simonson's covers. I like a lot of Rogers covers. However, there's so many less talented people that have done Wargame covers that are really just trying to look like a Roger McGowan or Redmond Simonson cover and have not been effective. So if GMT is now taking this step to try to establish a different sort of third style for wargaming covers, then I'm all for that. That's a great idea. Stephen Allen, hello from New Hampshire. Never been to New Hampshire, so the traditional, Western historiography periods like ancient, medieval, so and so don't necessarily map well to Asia too. So, and that's a thing we've actually talked about on the stream before. I'm not prepared to address that because it's going to take more research and a smarter person to cover that with any depth at all. So minimally, it's going to take me doing some digging. Normans outside of France and England. Yeah, so, I mean, the Normans, there were the Northmen, right? They were everywhere. They kept raiding up the Seine and became such a pain in the ass to the French kings that the French said, look, we'll give you this land. Nobody else is running right now. You can just live there and stop doing this. This is a pain. And they became the Normans, the Norman French. And they were pretty quickly Frenchified, but, they still maintained a few of their own interesting quirks too, like their cheese, for example, which is very good. Good Anglo-Saxon games. Well, so there's a couple good Anglo-Saxon battles. I mean, what are the Anglo-Saxon battles that you would want? The historical ones, not the magical King Arthur Fairyland ones. I mean, Stamford Bridge and Hastings are the obvious ones, right? Those are both in 1066. So, Edward was it Edward the Confessor? I think it was. Edward the Confessor dies, and there are then multiple claimants to the throne of England. But Harold Godwinson is actually in England and claims the throne. Harold Hardrada, the king of Norway at the time, also claims the English throne. I'm trying to make sure these stay sorted. And then William the Bastard, Duke of Normandy, claims the English throne. So Harold Hardrada invades in the north. Harold Godwinson races an army up to meet him, defeats and kills Harold Hardrada himself in a memorable battle at Stamford Bridge, and then gets word basically immediately afterward that William has landed an invasion force, and he races back south again to face William, and Harold's exhausted army is defeated by the Normans, and William, the names are going to screw me up on this, because I did not prepare material on this topic either. Harold's catches an arrow in the eye. So a lot of this is shown on the Bayeux Tapestry, which if you see what you have in your head as a picture of the word tapestry is probably not very similar to the Bayeux Tapestry, because the whole thing's about this big. So, but it's very long. It's just like this tall. It's not very big. So, Mander says that the Nevsky cover looks like something airbrushed on the side of a 70s conversion van. There's something to that, too. Normans in Sicily and Italy. Yeah, they were all over the place. The Northmen, I mean, it depends how we want to define Normans, right? Do we say they're Normans only after the establishment of the Duchy of Normandy, I probably wouldn't. But, I mean, you could do Viking Bows. You could easily do a whole volume on that. Now, of course, Empires... Hollenspiel has games on this topic, too. That's a good catch. Plus a couple of, like, Charlemagne. These are kind of very high strategic level games. But they're Charlemagne. They have one... Agricola, that's medieval too. So there's several things from Hollenspiel for this. And Empires of the Middle Ages from SPI. So that's kind of an interesting oddball game that has a hard time fitting with a lot of other things. Is it even a war game? I mean, there's probably people... that's not an argument I have any interest in having. But there's probably people who would argue that it is in fact not a war game. Nevertheless, it is an interesting game. It is a pretty well-regarded game. It's a game that still gets played, which is, there's a relatively limited number of SPI titles that really still get played. And it was redone by Decision and I have the Decision version. In what looks like a pretty credible redo. But I haven't tried to play it yet, so, I'd hate to... don't take that with a grain of salt, let me put it that way. Novgorod and Kiev were Swedish until the Mongol invasion as well. Well, I don't know that I'd use the term Swedish, but, I mean, I get the sense of what Doug is saying here. So, yeah, those were... very similar situation, actually, where kind of a Norse ruling class had set themselves up among the broader Slavic population and were relatively quickly blended into the local population. But those states did have Norse origins. So there's like I said, there's a lot you can do with the John is not going to make the Buckeye. So we're going to talk about that because Buckeye Game Fest starts on Monday. Okay, so the War Room starts on Monday, right? I'm not sure that there's going to be that much going on Monday morning. And in fact, I'm not sure there's going to be that much going on up to about Wednesday night. But starting at about Wednesday night, it's going to be hopping. There's going to be... I'm running the OCS boot camp. The Players Aid guys are going to be there. They're going to do some stuff with coin. There's probably going to be some... There's also going to be a Forgotten Battles playtest game that I don't know if it's going to have enough players or not. So I will be there. Essentially, I can't really get the whole week off. So I'm going to be there on Monday morning to get a couple of essential things set up. And then I'll be there from... and I might stop by in the evening on Tuesday. And then I'll be there Wednesday night to the end of the show. And I think I have LCS Bootcamp running on Wednesday night and it's Friday or something like that. Look, the schedule's on the website. A decent amount of OCS. I don't know that we're going to overwhelm anybody with OCS this time, but there's going to be the boot camp, and there's going to be the Forgotten Battles game. So that's, a decent amount of OCS, I would say. Mike Anthony asked about Al Nafi's Knights and Knaves. That is not a product I am familiar with. No, there's not going to be CCA or Crimea playtesting. I can confirm that. The next test for those is going to be Tempe. I'm confused. It'll sort itself out when I put it in there. Doug, you're not wrong about that. I mean, the Normans at that... Well, no, they were a French-speaking dynasty. I mean, so the Kievan Rus were Slavic-speaking as far as anybody knows, as I recall. Siege of Ismail, I'd have to look that up, to be honest. I uninstalled Civ 6 today. I hadn't really been playing it. That's why. It's not like I got frustrated and quit. It's just I wasn't really doing anything with it, and I wanted the hard drive space for Distant Worlds 2, so which I did buy today. Knights and Knaves supports up to 60 players. That's ambitious. Richard III from Colombia. So that's something I would call a operational game, and I'm saying that based on knowledge of the system, not knowledge of that particular game, which I have not played. So based on that system, I'd be inclined to call it operational. But again, hey, operational medieval, cool. Fornovo 1495. So I'm not sure what happened to that series. I will tell you this: I haven't played the game, so I know that it was reasonably well received, and then kind of dropped off, and nobody really talks about it anymore. Ismail is 1790. Then I'd say that's definitely post medieval. I mean, that's almost Napoleonic, right? The components for Fornovo are exceptionally attractive. John Madison uninstalled War Plan. Yeah, it's not as bad as Supreme. Is it Supreme? What's the damn thing called? Supreme Command or whatever that other one is called that I complained about last week. You're going to find that I am not your expert on the topic of Mongol battles. So. It's Tom MC. So, Distant Worlds universe is a problem because it's really kind of several games kind of tacked together, and it's not as smoothly integrated as it should be. If the complaint is that there's a bunch of stuff missing from Distant Worlds 2, I think that is accurate. And it is a problem I personally am willing to put up with, because there's an awful lot to Distant Worlds, and including Distant Worlds 2. I think it's enough, and I think it's going to end up being my go-to Space 4X game. There's also Hammer of the Scots. So is there another medieval one besides Richard III and Hammer of the Scots? I'm not sure, but... Jeff Beeler mentions In the Name of Justice, the Battle of Luz, 1264. Low complexity, 13th century battle in the Second Barons' War. So I actually just started listening to the Revolutions podcast series on the English Civil War. I actually started the series with the Russian Civil War, which is like 90 episodes, and is like the current series. I don't know how long it's going to go, but I don't know that it's that close to being over with. And I, rather than, not listen to anything, I moved back to the English Civil War stuff. And then I'll catch up on the Russian Civil War when there's another 10 episodes out or something like that. Tom MC says he likes War Plan. I don't hate War Plan. I just didn't like it as much as I'd rather play Third Reich, right? So, Crusader Rex, good call. That's the other, medieval one from Columbia Games. Clash of Arms, Barons' War, Battle of Luz and Evesham. GMT's Ivanhoe. Do I know anything about that? I'm not sure that I do. There's medieval. There's Richard Berg's game Medieval, but that's really kind of a card game. I don't know that anybody, including Richard Berg, would have called that a war game as such. I don't know much about Ivanhoe, though. I can tell you that. I'm having a bit of trouble with the lighting, which is not terrible, but I'm having a bit of trouble with the light. Ivanhoe is a trick-taking game. That sounds like not a war game to me. I'm willing to be corrected on this stuff, but that does not sound wargamey to me. Definitely some interesting things in the Columbia catalog in general that I would encourage people to take a look at as far as the block games go. We are, I think, about to be done with the French here. I did start a bit before before the stream, but I didn't get that much done. So, Avalon Hill's Feudal. That's definitely not a war game. That is an abstract chessy type strategy game. MMP Kingdom of Heaven has already been mentioned, and a couple people have had good things to say about it. I haven't played it yet. I do have it. Darkest Dungeon by Red Hook. Darkest Dungeon by Red Hook. That doesn't sound like a medieval war, like a medieval battle game to me, but is that? Yeah. Oh, that's a video game. That's supposed to... That is a roguelike. Am I right about that? John Madison, any 500 to 1,000 AD games on the Western Hemisphere / Americas? Great question, actually. I'm not sure the answer is yes, but it's a great question because the problem with that is that there's very little written history on it, right? Statements that there was no writing in the Western Hemisphere turned out to be incorrect. The Mayans had written language, quite sophisticated written language at that, but they didn't make it up there, and I'm not sure that they were around as such in that period. Again, I'll be happy to be corrected on any of that. 1C, right? Yeah, okay. Boy, these are huge units for the most part. Wait, do we have a 4C? Shit, we have a 4C here that I somehow didn't get to. There are... somebody retracted a comment. I'm not sure what that was about. Cry Havoc is a medieval game. I'd call it a medieval skirmish game. Again, feel free to argue with me about that, because I haven't played it. But I do remember seeing the very fancy, at the time, box and very fancy components. So it left a good impression, even though I've never played it. I still have a clear picture in my head from many, many years ago what it looked like. Old Guard. 4th Corps. So there is Conquest of Paradise, and that's a really... I haven't played that. That's a really interesting looking game. I don't know that there's a... I haven't played it, so I don't know if there's like a hard date on it or not. I had the impression that there wasn't, and I'd have been pretty fine if there wasn't. So 12th Corps. Yeah, I'm having a little trouble picking out the colors. Maybe I'm going colorblind in my old age. Stranger things have happened. Or maybe the lighting here is just not that good. That's possible. So yeah, Jeff Feeler, this is again, you know, I did say I wasn't going to really talk about Asian stuff just because I'm not prepared to talk about it. I would put Chandragupta in that category. Chandragupta is really interesting, actually. It is, you know, Mughal, well, I don't know if it's just Mughal India necessarily. I think it isn't. But it's ancient India, and it's really neat looking, and some of the battles are quite large, too. I really like, for the record, I really like Space Empires 4X. Conquest of Paradise is a historical 4X game. And that in itself is pretty interesting. I'm going to get another counter trade. Because it's kind of hard to justify a lot of the mechanisms that you might see in 4X games in a historical context. Another one that's also going to have kind of a strong 4X flavor is going to be, what is it called? It's the New Zealand game, or the game by Kevin McPartland, coming from Compass. I forget exactly what it's called, which I've played, actually. It's pretty neat. We get the fan off me here because it's kind of warm in here, but it's also making my nose stuffy and I'm sniffing more than I'd like to. Okay, so during this show, GMT's Norman Conquest game has made its P500 number. You're welcome, GMT. Wouldn't be the first time. Granada and the End of the Reconquista. That's actually an interesting. That's 1490. So the End of the Reconquista is 1492. It's really easy to remember the date. That's another another date that you could, for a couple of reasons, including the End of the Reconquista or the discovery of the New World, say that this is when the medieval period ends. And the fact is, if you talk to historians about it, you'll get a bunch of different answers. You'll get about as many answers as there are historians. So these kind of periodization questions are subject to continual debate and relatively frequent revision, actually. So, take it all with a grain of salt, right? Banish the Snakes, yes, that's definitely not a 4X game, though. But that's the same designer, same Kevin McPartland. Maori Wars is not the game I'm thinking of. But because that's out. That's from Legion Wargames. I don't really know that much about either the period or the game, but man, the map is gorgeous. 878 Vikings. Is that an Ameritrash game? I would say... I think there's... So I haven't played it, but I have played 1775 Rebellion, and there's dice in that, right? So... if there's dice in it, I think it's... maybe Euro people are going to have trouble calling it a Euro. Let me put it that way. I did not pre-order Banish the Snakes. I've met Kevin, by the way, Kevin McPartland. He's a swell guy. But I have not ordered Banish the Snakes, just because I'm not that into St. Patrick. Or Irish. So... oh, good... oh, so nobody mentioned it, but good call. Good call. Mike Anthony mentions Duel Britannia starts as the Romans and British collapse. So, yes, you could absolutely look at that as a medieval game. But what that makes me immediately leap to is possibly my favorite coin game, Pendragon, which is a game by Morgan, whose last name I will mangle if I try to pronounce it. But that is a fantastic game. Highly if you are into coin games, highly recommended. It's one of the more complicated coin games too. So I'm completely okay with highly recommending Pendragon. Perfidious Albion, I believe that to be correct. I believe that to be an accurate statement. But, I really haven't looked at it, to be honest, other than looking at the map and saying, ooh, that's nice. So... All is Lost Save Honor, Campaigns of the Italian Wars, 1494 to 1530. That sounds interesting. And one of these days we'll do a show on 30 Years' War as well. That won't be tonight, obviously, but one of these days we'll do a game on 30 Years' War, and I can talk about 30 Years' War games. Oh, for Pete's sake. This All is Lost Save Honor is from... my favorite named gaming company, Europa Simulazione. And it is a hex game. Campaigns. Oh, this looks super interesting, actually. This looks operational. Yeah, this looks operational. This looks very interesting. Is this card-driven, I wonder? Doesn't look like it is. Jeff Beeler, that's a good catch there, too. That is not the game I'm thinking of either. Apparently, we're racking up the orders for Norman Conquest. So, yeah, I do. Like I said, I really like, of the coin games, is that the only medieval one? I think that's correct. It's the only medieval one I can think of, although there's a couple of ancient ones. I think my favorite coin games are Liberty or Death and Pendragon. Now, bear in mind, I have not played Fire in the Lake or Gandhi. I'm kind of hoping to get Fire in the Lake and maybe even Gandhi played at Buckeye Game Fest, but we'll see. Maori, Warriors of the Long White Cloud. Yes, that is the game I'm thinking of. That is Kevin McPartland's game that does have some 4X elements in it, and it's actually quite neat. Kingmaker, yeah, Kingmaker's neat. I mean, speaking of that, though, there's also Crown of Roses, which is a GMT game that is on the Wars of the Roses, which is a 4-player block hidden info block game, card driven as well. And it's kind of got a lot going on. It's a bit of a difficult system, and probably really needs 4 players, but to really make it shine. But it's really quite neat, and I think there's a lot of game there to like. I think you kind of got to fight the rule book a bit, but I think once you get that down, I think it's a really good game. Pendragon pre-medieval, maybe. I'm not sure that it is. So when does the ancient period, or the classical period, I suppose, end, and when does the medieval period begin? I think you can make a case that in England, which is where Pendragon is set, that the classical period ends when the Romans leave, and that's when the game starts. So if you look at the calendar, as you look at the date, I think you're probably going to end up with a date that's something like 380 or something like that. And that's still going to kind of sound ancient because it's before that fall of either the last sack of Rome, well, not the last sack of Rome, but the big sack of Rome that everybody thinks of, or the fall of the last Western Roman Emperor. But then again, you have that period of it's called late antiquity, right? And I've pegged the end of that period in the past as of the coronation of Charlemagne. I like Crown of Roses quite a bit, actually. So, Gelfs and Ghibellines. It wasn't until I'd heard the words, but I had no idea what they meant until I took the class. Yeah, which is basically diplomacy. It's one of those sort of diplomacy variants. I think Maharaja was one of those, was it not? DCB says, is there a distinction between Dark Ages and medieval? So the term Dark Ages is out of fashion among historians nowadays. And they tend to replace it with the term late antiquity instead. And, I took a couple of those classes. So I tend to agree with them on that. The idea of a Dark Ages was kind of based on this notion that after the Roman Empire fell, everything went to hell. And there is a sense in which that's true, but there's also a sense in which that is not true. And certainly, not everything that was good got forgotten or went away in the so-called Dark Ages. So we have this idea of late antiquity, which is more or less the fall of the Roman Empire in the West, again, up until the establishment of the quote-unquote new Roman Empire, which is the Carolingian Empire, the Empire of Charlemagne. So, which is, are those dates all arbitrary? Yeah, they totally are. And one of the reasons I think why it's called or considered late antiquity or talked about as late antiquity is because there's still a Roman Empire in the East, right? That is a direct continuation of the Roman Empire, that calls itself the Roman Empire, that does its stuff in the name of the Roman Empire, and whose citizens call themselves literally Romans. So, we call them the Byzantines, but that is a distinction that was nowhere in sight in any of, while the Byzantine Empire, the so-called Byzantine Empire, was around. So, for the sake of everybody knowing what I'm talking about, I use the term Byzantine Empire too, but use of that term can definitely give you the wrong idea about the nature of that entity. So, Ken X mentions, first of all, Ken, welcome back. Book came out last year called The Bright Ages. That sounds like it might be interesting. They did speak Greek because Greek was the lingua franca of the Eastern Mediterranean, as it had been since the time of Alexander, or maybe even before. But yes, it was Greek speaking, but they still called themselves Romans. Never mind the billhooks. That sounds fantastic. I think what we really need is a war game that has detailed rules for all of those bizarre Gygaxian polearms. The Byzantines did have legions, but they also had a different kind of army than the Western Roman Empire did back in the classical period, where it's, here's the legions, and it's mostly an infantry force with some cavalry and large weapons support. The Byzantines had a much more cavalry-focused army than than what you typically think of as Roman legions. So we're not going to be able to completely get into this in detail, but there were advancements and innovations in a lot of areas in the Dark Ages that were things that the Romans hadn't thought of. What we didn't have was this kind of overarching, pan-civilizational government like we had during the Roman period. Cataphracts is specifically what I'm thinking of, yeah. So, and again, all of that stuff that you think of as, the Dark Ages, the Byzantine Empire is thriving during a huge portion of that period, really all of that period, until the rise of Islam in the, I think, 8th century. And even then, the Byzantines hung on to being a powerful state for quite a long time after that. I mean, the place didn't fall to the Ottomans until 1490 or something like that. There's some interesting history that I don't clearly remember, so I'm not going to repeat it, about why the Vatican City is considered its own thing in a little enclave inside the city of Rome. So feel free to investigate that. Yeah. So we're going to do our huge number of Russian leaders in this thing. Jeff Beeler mentions Crusader Kingdoms. That is a game from Worthington. It looked like it was not going to be my bag, to be honest. So I did not really investigate it particularly closely. Let's see here. I'm trying to organize these by core, which is kind of working. Kind of. SPI game on Fall of Constantinople. That is true. Was that the additional game in the Art of Siege? Because there was the Art of Siege, the quad, which was in a big soapbox, and then there was one additional game in the series that came outside the quad, and I think it was Fall of Constantinople. Carl says they went to Rome and they didn't get to see the Vatican because the line was around the country, which is fantastic. I don't know that James Whitmer. I don't want to propagate bad information, so I don't want to say. But I thought that deal was made with the king, one of the kings of Italy, rather than with Mussolini, but I could be wrong. These are all mixed up. Oh, wait a minute. There's C. David Harrison mentions Wells' book, Barbarians to Angels, The Dark Ages Reconsidered. Yes, that's got a good reputation. So if you're interested in hearing more about that, then that is... I haven't read the book, but I have heard of it. So that is, I think, a potential book to read on that subject. I think I mentioned last Friday that I was reading the Hastings book on Vietnam, which is, got some issues as a book, but which is why we did Vietnam on Friday. So I think most people are probably still using AD and BC. But that's not an argument I'm going to have it with anybody, I'll tell you that. Okay, so we're now going with no water. And I think the nose does open up just a little bit with the water. But I don't think it needs it either. It's really good. All right, so we're after 9. And I think we're probably not going to get the Russians. I think I'm done clipping, is what I'm going to say. Well, Jason W., we could just use the Jewish calendar instead. It's in the year 5000 something, right? Oh, for fuck's sake. So, yeah, we got rid of that. I'm a little surprised I don't have more of that, to be honest. But I guess I've hit the big time now that somebody saw that, hey, there's 96 people watching his bozo. Let's put some titties in the chat. So. Okay, Perfidious Albion says the dispute between the Gitane and well, the dispute may have ended, but there's, the de facto situation too, so. And I don't know if I'm blaming that on the Russians or not. So, if you'd like to help support the efforts in Ukraine, by the way, there is a link in the video description. That has been pre-vetted, not by me, but by Modifius. So I looked at their sites. There's a couple of different options there for you to help support those efforts. So feel free to click into that. I'll also mention that there are super chats on. So if you want me to not miss your comment or question, that's a great way to do it. And it's much appreciated, too, when it happens. So, John, I had a wiki site set up at one point, which was even smaller than the Winterfest forums, because, literally nobody but me and the spam bots ever visited it. And it was really bad. So, it was a tremendous amount of effort and bullshit to keep that police until I finally just gave up. So, I don't know what the 56 likes. It looks like what we have right now. So that's pretty good. Need some more water. It's starting to get a little hiccupy here. So I had my last tattoo sitting yesterday. And the whole thing is now covered in this Sanoderm plastic shit that honestly makes it pretty uncomfortable. It doesn't really, the skin doesn't really hurt that much, but this plastic stuff is super irritating. But I've been told that it really helps the color sink in. It's allegedly completely breathable, so I'm really trying to keep it on until about tomorrow. So, Genpei War. 1180 to 1185 war in Japan. That's Sounds quite interesting, and in fact, there's a reason why a lot of people are interested in Japanese history, because there's actually a lot of interesting history there. There are 3 games recognized by BGG on that topic, actually. One in, is this Command Magazine? No. So, John, I can't even tell you which one you're talking about. There's a 2011 game, a 2005 game, and a 2017 game. So, one of which looks like it's from a Italian, maybe, a designer. All on that topic. And that's definitely, I'd definitely call that medieval. I mean, it feels medieval regardless of what the date is on it, right? So... So that's what John says. He has some issues that resulted in Naked HD XYZ's hopping into the chat, whatever that was. Mander says that it's Dan Pancaldi's fault, which of course I'm sure he's correct. Dan sent the hookers. You might have to learn Ukrainian if you go over there to be a mercenary, though. So that could be an issue. As long as, Will Smith didn't hit you, you'll be okay. People are taking, imagining that Chris Rock can take Will Smith, and I'm not buying that for a second. Will Smith is a guy who credibly played Muhammad Ali. I'm guessing Will Smith could tear Chris Rock's arms and legs off if he wanted to. As opposed to just slapping the shit out of him. So, Graffiti's Element says, not since the Spanish Civil War has there been this much outcry from other private individuals wanting to do something. That might be true, actually. Spanish Civil War drew a lot of volunteer attention. So did the Winter War against Finland, too. Don't forget that. There were British volunteers fighting the against the Soviets in service of the Finns when, their country was fighting the Germans. That was awkward. So, the reaction shot from the audience, there wasn't really a reaction shot. There's some photo montages of the reaction shot, and like the Rock's like what the fuck? The fuck just happened? So that's hilarious. But like I said, I. Happy to just declare everybody in the wrong on that, but Chris Rock did keep his cool, and I think you do have to give him credit for that. That he didn't flip out or anything like that. Even though I'd have probably flipped out if Will Smith came up to me and belted me in the face. So I will credit him for kind of the show must go on. And not the, after getting belted in the teeth. So that got censored here in the U.S. I think nobody saw it, but I wasn't watching it, so I don't know. But it was seen everywhere else in the world. So. Bayonet Brand, of course, mentions... Yeah, Brand, I didn't mention that because I think everybody knew that. Everybody here knows about the Flying Tigers and Claire Chenault. So... That's true. But everybody involved is probably going to end up making people mad or contributing to the success of their own things. So... I did hear the swearing exchange on the Australian, I think, in my case, YouTube. John Madison saw a meme of Andrew Garfield texting the other Peter Parkers to check to see if Will Smith slapped Chris Rock in their universes. That's actually hilarious. I think that's funny. I don't really have much to say about it other than that stuff I've already said. We could spend the entire night joking about or whatever about the Will Smith, Chris Rock. Oh, what the fuck. get rid of them again. John, you got one of them. I got the rest. I'm also reporting them. So what happens when you hit the big time? I'll tell you. So the film, I heard of the movie, but I had no idea what the movie was about. The movie that Will Smith won the Best Actor award for was called King Richard, and it's a biopic of where he plays the father of Venus and Serena Williams. Not really sure that, God damn it, not really sure that that's in my wheelhouse. So, yeah, report him too, John, because that needs to get reported to YouTube so that YouTube steps on him. John Keyports. So, I've talked about this. So, here's what I've got Nevsky, okay? I have not had a chance to play it. It looks interesting, and there's some good video on it on YouTube. Their system appears to have a lot going for it because a shitload of very talented people have jumped on it as a vehicle for doing various medieval topics. There's a map floating around about all the various not Musket and Pike, but Levy and Campaign games that are in development right now. And in addition to the 5 or whatever it is that are up for pre-order, there's about 10 more. So, and our very own Justigard is working on one of them. So there's a lot moving in that space, and so I think there's definitely something going on in that system that's interesting. Nevsky specifically also has a relatively low footprint, which is nice. Some of the other ones in that series will have an even smaller footprint, although you can't really get much smaller unless you do without the board entirely. I want to thank you, William Ahrens, for helping out and helping to make me feel better about the barrage of Russian strippers that are coming in and talking this time. So, we'll have to wonder if Will Smith's outburst was a function of reworking his TV persona image now being worked in the darker drama Prince. Well, I don't know, but the immediate joke was that he's been sent to live with his aunt and uncle in Lair due to his misbehavior last night. So definitely, to answer John Keyports, there are definitely some interesting things happening in that space with that series. So I'm very curious to get to play it at some point. Brant says, what would be an interesting mercenary-style game is playing some sort of corporate level, latter-day professional military corporation, and having to run the business. Ugh. Yeah, you could make an interesting simulation out of that. I think you're better off with doing that as a computer game. So William Bird, I have no opinion on that. I have literally no information. Literally the first thing I heard about that movie was literally last night. Justigard is doing the Seljuk game, which is a game about the Turks, which looks real interesting too. Exactly how far along it is, I don't know. I have ordered Almoravid, and it is scheduled to be billed pretty soon. I think they said the 12th. That sounds roughly correct. Captain Asparagus with a zinger. I'm very interested in the Reconquista as a topic, and there really haven't been that many games about it, and Granada just came out too, though. But Granada is not the whole Reconquista; it's the tiny little last part of it. So I'm more interested to see. I'm interested to see Almoravid too. Granada looks good, actually. Block Oddity, thanks so much. I appreciate it. You could, instead of playing Traveler with that, you could play Merc 2000, which was the companion game to Twilight 2000 back in the day, although I don't know that anybody's bringing that back. I used to, back when like the Lord of the Rings movies were coming out, I was like hosting an Oscar watch party when that was going on. And then once the movies I really cared about ceased to be released, I became less interested in doing that. So, I mean, you could... The Merc Contractor Company game, you could get something interesting out of that. I mean, there are computer games that are like prison operator simulators, right? So you could easily do something along those lines, and I think make it work. And that, for that matter, if you have a John Longshore, thanks so much, because he feels bad about having napped during the Russian stripper invasion. The El Cid, yes, that's true. I don't want to say it's a terrible movie. It's got its charms. I haven't seen it in a long time. I'd be curious to rewatch El Cid when Almorovitch shows up and see how well it holds up. I don't like Sophia Loren, to be honest. Oh, here they are again. They're not giving up. I'm going to let John handle it now. Get to work. I have hidden them from the channel multiple times, so I don't know what's going on. John Keyport says that he's in the Levian Campaign Discord server where a lot of that conversation is happening, and he says there are over 17 games being worked, including some in medieval Japan and the Americas. Very curious to see how that works out. Sophia Loren was hot. I agree. I'm not arguing that. I just I don't think she was all that great as an actress. Kilroy, welcome back, asking about DVG's PMC Warfighter. And Anton Kolot, thanks for stopping by. He says the exploits of executive outcomes in Angola is an interesting topic while we're on the Merc theme. This was not the topic for this evening. Yeah, I'm not calling that a medieval... Tim Zales, I'm not calling that a medieval movie. That said, it's probably one of my top 20 favorite movies, Excalibur. Fantastic film. John Borman. The movie's really kind of weird if you think about it. The treatment of Merlin is really kind of weird. Nicole Williamson's delivery is kind of weird. There's a lot of weird stuff going on in that movie. Igraine is played by Borman's daughter, which is a little bit creepy. So a lot of weird stuff happening there. But it's a great movie. I have not seen Arn. I've heard of it. It is a Scandinavian production of some kind. I'll be honest. I think it's a bit classless to reuse somebody else's game name. Although I understand that, nobody can be 100% fresh either. So... Kilroy's The Legend of Sid on Amazon Prime. I have to check that out. Ladyhawke. Ugh. That's also a fantasy movie. There's a making of documentary for Excalibur. I'm not sure I've seen that. Aguirre, The Wrath of God. Herzog's masterpiece. And Dale Brady, thanks so much. Has ordered both Men of Iron and Nevsky. Outstanding. I do think you'll get a lot of... enjoyment value out of Men of Iron. I watched the absolute shit out of Excalibur. That was more of a teenager for me, but I'll have to Tim, where is that documentary available? There's also a documentary called Blackmore, or Legend of Blackmore, or something like that. That's about... It's kind of Dave Arneson's side of the creation of D&D story. I kind of want to see that, although I'm also prepared to, take that with it as one person's side of things. Perfidious Albion, are you talking about the Fountain with Rachel Weisz and Wolverine guy, whose name I can't remember now? I saw that in the theater. That's an interesting and very visually striking movie. Zardoz was bizarre. I mean, you thought Excalibur was weird in places. It's got nothing on Zardoz. Zardoz is like one of the weirdest movies of all time, I think. Not that Blackmore. Hugh Jackman. Yep, that's it. When Excalibur, I know the movie came out in 1980, but I didn't see it in the theater, so I would have seen it on cable TV probably in the early 80s, say around 83 or something like that. It was one of those movies that on cable would have been in my rotation with Conan the Barbarian and you got to subscribe to something to subscribe to what? I am subscribed to Prime. Why is it not? That's weird. Anyway, we'll figure it out. But it's a great movie. But Excalibur and the Sword and the Sorcerer and the Beastmaster. Flesh and Blood was a movie I did see. I'm sure it was later. Was not a thing that I loved. It's an interesting movie. I don't think anybody's gotten Eric yet. I don't think they're going to start shipping it until about tomorrow. So, which I guess reminds me I'm going to get billed for it anytime. But I have pre-ordered Eric, so if you haven't ordered it already, it's probably too late now to get the pre-order price. Oh, somebody's talking about First Night, I think. That's a terrible movie. Somebody also mentioned Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. That's the Kevin Costner Robin Hood. And I actually think that's an underrated movie. Costner himself is, let's face it, not great in it. But everybody else is. Everybody else is really great in it. So I think it's a pretty well written movie. So I think it's a bit underrated. Oh God, we're dying here due to this. Men of Iron. When do I think that's going to come out? I'd say 2023. That's my guess. In the Name of the Rose is a great movie, actually. Based on the Umberto Eco novel. All right, we're trying to get rid of him. Well, it's a Robin Hood movie. I mean, it might as well be there might as well be wizards in it, right? I'm not going to hold Robin Hood movies to the standards of even historical films. Robin and Marion's a pretty good movie too. I'm not really claiming that several of these movies are good, by the way. The Beastmaster specifically is really actually kind of an atmospheric film, actually. William Aarons, once again, thank you so much. Do I see any crossover between medieval games and outer space-oriented games in terms of the strict hierarchy and bleak environments found in both? In some cases, yes. So there is a certain strain of space opera in which mankind has returned to feudalism as its method of government. And the obvious example is Dune, but it's pretty far from the only example, right? You could look at the Asimov's Empire from the Foundation books and the Empire books, for that matter, and a variety of other things. So a lot of that space opera tradition has bled over into games. The vast majority of science fiction games, whether they are video games, computer games, board games, role-playing games, or whatever, have leaned very heavily in the direction of space opera. There are a few exceptions. There's shock, social science fiction. There's been a couple of Diaspora, which tries to be more of a hard science fiction game. There are examples, but largely space opera is very heavily leaned into, and there is a strain of space opera where we've just all decided we'd be better off with it with a monarch again. Kingdom of Heaven is a good movie if you watch the extended version. If you watch the theatrical version, it's absolutely choppy and incoherent. There was Greek Fire, yeah. Oh, the Ridley Scott Robin Hood movie, was that the one with Russell Crowe? Because that one did suck, actually. It was less good than, Russell Crowe is a better actor than Kevin Costner, but the movie sucked. It was not well written. I found that Ridley Scott is highly dependent on the quality of the material he has to work with. If he has good material to work with, which he has on any number of occasions, you'll end up with a good movie out of it. If he has bad material to work from, like Prometheus, you'll end up with unwatchable trash. So, Alan Rickman was fantastic in that, and obviously had tons of fun. Jeff Anderson, I know the movie that you're talking about, the Polish film with a really good sword fight. I don't remember the name of it either, but I've seen the sword fight because you can watch it on YouTube. Braveheart is a different kind of movie, okay, from a random Robin Hood film. Braveheart purports to be a historical medieval film, and the history in Braveheart is like 91% total horseshit. People making the movie made no bones about that. They said, we went for drama rather than historicity, blah, 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 blah. That's fine, but that makes me unhappy with the movie. There is a YouTube channel called History. What's it called? There's been a million dissections of Braveheart and its historical problems on YouTube. Let me put it that way. So it is a good movie, right? Don't get me wrong. It is an absolutely entertaining movie to watch, but as history, it is trash. So, Fading Suns use feudalism in space. Fading Suns is Dune with the serial numbers filed off. And more fantasy elements added, I should say. I don't want to discredit Fading Suns quite that much. I forget which numbered edition of Fading Suns I played. It may have been the second edition. There are some problems with the mechanics that I do not like. Brother Cadfael, yeah, with Derek Jacobi. Or Derek Jacobi. Mike Anthony's working on a game on a revolt. Mike, I'm unclear as to whether you're joking or not. The Messenger. That's a decent movie. That's the one with Mila Jovovich as Joan of Arc. Which, I'd like to see The Last Duel. I have not seen it. I have not watched The King on Netflix. That's the Timothée Chalamet as Henry V, with Robert Pattinson as the Dauphin. The fictional Dauphin, I'll point out. Yes, okay, so Marty Sample, if that, I remember that ridiculous thing with the landing with the wooden landing craft at the end. It's absolutely idiotic. Rob Roy's a good movie too, but also has historical problems. Yeah, that's one. Perfidious Albion mentioned Sterling Bridge, where there wasn't a bridge in the movie. just because they decided it would be more exciting if they just had a big field battle. And let's say that's the least of the movie's problems. There's the Last Kingdom series. I actually want to watch that. I've never had a Rob Roy, actually. I just like drinking scotch. I don't need to put it in a cocktail. I was like making an effort to drink cocktails when I was out in Seattle. But then I discovered this and I stopped. Is that Empire of the Fading Suns available on Steam? Because that is a PC game. And I remember when it came out. Or it might be available on GOG, too. Looks like that's not the case. So the thing with the King, I suspect that what you are going to get is a retelling of Shakespeare more than the history, right? And that's got to be super tempting. I mean, The Green Knight is clearly a fantasy movie too, and I do realize that there's a lot of crossover between. Well, a lot of fantasy, a lot of modern Western fantasy has medieval flavor. Oh, that Templars thing looked bad. The fact that they pitched it as it's like Vikings, but for the Templars, made me think, hey, this is not something I'm going to enjoy. Because I did not like the Vikings show. I thought it was ludicrous. It looked good, and the fight scenes were really well done, but it was written by stupid people, and I objected to that. I haven't seen that. I watched, I think, the first half of the first episode of the filmed version of that, and I hadn't gotten any farther than that. I got so much stuff to watch. So the Bernard Cornwell, I would like to. God, I got a lot of stuff to read. I'm still trying to finish off Max Hastings so I can put that to bed. So that's where I am with reading right now. I bought something else. What did I buy? I bought something else. I forget what it was. I subscribed to that military history books thread on BGG, and that's led me to a lot of military history books that cost $3 or less. Norseman was an actual comedy, though, so I'm willing to be forgiven. The actual comedy, yes, William Byrd, I agree. That was something. I wasn't willing to become stupider to watch it, though. Ron, so the Akira Kurosawa film Ron, the namesake of the game Ron from GMT, is Kurosawa's retelling set in feudal Japan of King Lear. And it's really great. So highly, highly, highly recommended. I have not seen The Navigator. I probably should. The arrow removal of Henry V. Yeah, one of the YouTube blacksmithing channels made the arrow removal tool. That actually sounded cool. See, Marty, I don't agree. I think Vikings was absolutely fucking stupid from the very beginning. Where Ragnar says he wants to sail to the west to discover the lands there, and and Gabriel Byrne says, there are no lands to the west. Fuck you. They hundreds of years before, they knew there was a fucking country called England to the southwest. That's just dumb writing. That writer is just an idiot. I was offended by that. There's also the fact that, okay, so his brother's name is Rollo, okay? Rollo is the Norman French version of the Norse name Hrolf. And that's the guy that hundreds of years later becomes the first Duke of Normandy, right? Was Rollo. Centuries between him and Ragnar Lothbrok, who is a historical character, right? They could have just made it a fantasy setting or not used the historical character names, and I probably wouldn't have objected too much, because I could have always said, okay, they don't know about England, so maybe it's like 400 AD here. I don't know. That's really pre-Norse. but whatever. No, I found it aggressively and offensively stupid from the very beginning. I am prepared to believe that it got better later. That's possible, but they lost me inside the first 5 episodes or so. I have read one of Joe Abercrombie's books. The Blade itself, I think, is the one I read, and that was very good. But I haven't read any more. Achilles, of course, mentions Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which you can't really criticize that, right? It's a brilliant film in so many ways, in smart ways too, right? The knights go in and they're going to take the castle over and they start stabbing everybody in sight. God damn it. Thank you, John. Homie the Clown. Rollo is the name. I mean, when I think of the name Rollo, I think of the dude from Sanford and Son. But the name is the Frenchified Norman name. So William Aarons just bought Bonaparte in the Quadrilateral, Napoleon's Wheel, and the Battle of Fismes. Yeah, the games are all not only similar, but I mean, there's really not even many game-specific rules in them. You did want Napoleon's Wheel for the card deck. It's now a universal card deck. Other than that, right here, man, I got them all at this point. I do have a replacement box coming for The Last Success because I talked Kevin Zucker into sending me one, or selling me one, I should say. But let your interest guide you in terms of the rest of them. So it'd be nice if YouTube would actually auto ban them if you keep. Of course, they're obviously doing this from different channels, so. Dan Jones is The Hollow Crown. Yeah, that's so the BBC miniseries The Hollow Crown is worth watching too if you're into Shakespeare. It's like the ultimate Shakespeare. It's like all the medieval histories that he did in that are set in England, all kind of done with a top-notch cast by the BBC. It's really good. I learned my French accent from Inspector Clouseau, I'll have you know. I Claudius, not medieval, but I Claudius is awesome. I will tell you. It's 2 books, right? There's I Claudius and Claudius the God, and the miniseries covers both of them. Yeah, I'm not clear on why the block doesn't seem to be working. So I would be curious if folks watching block that person if they continue to show up. The White Princess. I've heard about that. I have not watched it. Derek Jacobi's, I mean, if you watch that, you'll see literally everybody, right? I mean, so you've got Derek Jacobi plays Claudius. Brian Blessed plays Augustus. Cyan Phillips plays Livia, who's, this is why she got cast as the Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohim, and a variety of other similar roles. Patrick Stewart is in it with I believe wearing a rug. John Rhys Davies is in it. Just tons of other British actors. John Hurt is in it. John Hurt plays Caligula, and he's brilliant as Caligula. So there's tons of of great actors that you'll recognize in I, Claudius, in addition to it just being great normally. That is not my dog. Yeah, Mike Anthony, that's what I surmise is occurring here. Not much I can do except, let John block him. So thank you, John, for your immense service to the channel this evening. His block finger's getting a workout. I don't know. Some, geeks are lonely, I guess is the thinking. So, like I said, I'm surprised we don't get more of that. I'm surprised. I've other than the occasional spammer that will pop in, I think I've blocked 2 people ever from the stream for misbehavior, and that's not very much. So I think Kilroy's trying to be funny. Titus Andronicus, yeah. So there was a version of Titus Andronicus that was made that they made a movie out of not that long ago. Was Anthony Hopkins playing Titus? That sounds right. With Jessica Lange as I forget the role's name. Yes, Patrick Stewart played Sejanus. Who's definitely played up as a villain, and it's hard to read the history and not read Sejanus as a villain. Let me put it this way. I haven't blocked anybody yet. Oh yeah, so did they was there a remake of the Pink Panther starring Steve Martin? Because that had to have been an absolute atrocity. That is not a thing I needed. And there was the one with Roberto Benigni, where they tried to relaunch the series after Peter Sellers passed away. They tried to relaunch the series with Roberto Benigni as like the nephew or something like that. It was bizarre. Yes, the Titus was pretty weird. I mean, it wasn't Zardav's weird, but it was pretty weird. Wolf Hall keeps getting mentioned. That sounds interesting. So there's 2 series. Oh, let me pull them up. There's 2 series about Catherine the Great on Amazon Prime. There's Catherine the Great, which is the one I haven't started watching, and there's Ekaterina, which I watched an episode of. And Ekaterina is actually filmed, is actually a Russian production. Catherine the Great looks like a Russian production as well, but one's from 2015 and the other one is from 2014, so I don't know. And these are both series, right? So there's 3 seasons of Ekaterina. And only one of Catherine the Great. So, and there's also the one with Nicholas Hoult and Elle Fanning or somebody like that. That's supposed to be about Catherine the Great as well. Which is called The Great, and I think that's on Hulu, I think. I could be wrong about that. Yeah, the people making that show have said, yeah, we're not really going for accuracy here. So, I hear it's entertaining. Am I right that that's on Hulu, or is that somewhere else? Because I'd actually like to check that. You got to talk to Jim Ozarski. Zardoz is his favorite film. Now, I've seen the first Elizabeth, and it's really good, but the second one I haven't seen, and it does not have a good reputation. With the ones with Cate Blanchett. Well, that particular czar was, in fact, a dimwit. So, I mean, certainly the czars were known as occasional dimwits. Many examples abound. This itch is absolutely... So, I didn't mention it, but the tattoo is a half sleeve. So, it goes from here all the way up, and then it goes over here. So, and it itches ferociously. We didn't say the magic word that makes Jim appear. You know what the magic word is. I'm not going to say it. You know what the magic word is. And it's not Jim's name. I don't know that... I would not consider Waterloo even in my top 30. It's a great movie for certain things. Those battle scenes have never been equaled anywhere, for example. Those are the best battle scenes, and definitely the best Napoleonic battle scenes ever committed to film, and it's not close. Rod Steiger is great, but there's a lot of other strong personalities in that period, some of which are in the movie, that don't shine in the film. I'm talking about Ney, I'm talking about Blucher, I'm talking about Wellington. And Wellington's played by Christopher Plummer, who, has a couple of good lines, but is not really... I mean, it so much centers on Rod Steiger as Napoleon, which you can understand because he's really good. But I would have liked to have seen the spotlight shown on some of the other interesting Napoleonic individuals as well. Jason Peterson asks, what's the best Napoleonic TV or film? I mean, Waterloo's up there, frankly. I'd be curious. You know who made a great Napoleon? I know the movie's a comedy, but he was still really good, is Ian Holm. Made a great Napoleon. That was in... I think he played Napoleon in something else, too. But the movie I'm thinking of is Time Bandits. The Sharp stuff, I haven't seen any of that. That's supposed to be good. Master and Commander, yeah, I mean, it's technically Napoleonic, but that's a great movie. But I'd call it a nautical movie or an Age of Sail movie, right, rather than a Napoleon movie. If we stipulate that Napoleon has to actually show up in the movie, Master and Commander does not count. Horatio Hornblower is, of course, an obvious example. The Duelists, that's a good movie. And that's David Warner plays evil in Time Bandits. That's a good example of a movie where the casting seems really daffy. I mean, it's Keith Carradine and Harvey Keitel as these Napoleonic officers. And today, nobody would ever cast them in those kind of roles. But back in the 70s, it happened, and it really worked, because they are great actors. Andrei Rublev, yeah. Sharp might be the only series in which Sean Bean survives in Jupiter Ascending, too. And boy, if you haven't seen that, and you can catch it on a streaming service to which you are already subscribed, I highly recommend it. I can't promise that you'll like it, and I can't promise that you'll think it's good, but you will definitely, when the movie's over, you will say to yourself, man, that was off the hook. That was just so much. It's worth seeing almost just for that. Just because it is off the hook. I keep hearing about, a variety of people. Stanley Kubrick was supposed to do a Napoleon biopic too, and that never happened either. So, Les Miserables, no thanks. I don't even know exactly when that is set. I don't think it's set in the Napoleonic period, is it? Sean Bean was not killed in Ronin either, that is true. But he was revealed as a poser. Pretty good movie, by the way. Ridley Scott's made tons and tons and tons of really good movies, and he's made a couple total stinkers. Jeff Anderson asks, better than Harvey Keitel in Apocalypse Now? I'd say no, because I think that Apocalypse Now is a masterpiece, and I don't know that The Duelists is a masterpiece. It's just a really good movie. Oh, the Sergei Eisenstein film Nevsky, yeah, with the Prokofiev soundtrack. So, that's worth your time, and the soundtrack is definitely worth your time. Peter Rushman says Les Mis is the 1870s revolution. Okay. '70s, like the Paris Commune. I'm confused. Barry Lyndon, for those who haven't seen it. So Barry Lyndon is an adaptation of the novel by Thackeray, which I have not read, and it's an amazing film. Highly recommended. It's the Kubrick film that a lot of people don't know about. It's an amazing movie, and it's like, I don't want to say it's the only good thing. It's like one of the two good things that Ryan O'Neal has ever been in that have been good. Oh, right. So presumably he was better then. I'm not into Les Miserables. It literally, as far as I know, translates as The Miserable, and I'd be miserable if I watched it. No thanks. It's about people, everybody gets the shaft in that film. I got no desire to watch that whatsoever. Where did the bag? Here it is. I've never seen Paper Moon. The other good Ryan O'Neal movie is, of course, A Bridge Too Far, but that's because Ryan O'Neal's, not in it that much. $1848 makes sense. 1870. I don't know. I'm not looking it up. So nobody look it up for me. It's okay. I'm still not watching it. So, the Scarlet Pimpernel. Good. That's an interesting call. We're on to French Revolution, apparently. Roger Hemseth. First of all, welcome back to the stream. You talking about the Richard III starring Ian McKellen? Because that's really good. No, that wasn't Keitel. Kubrick had hired somebody to play the drill sergeant before coming to the conclusion that no, our technical advisor would just be better at this. And I mean, there's a whole myth cycle that's revolves around R. Lee Ermey and Full Metal Jacket. I'm happy I wasn't forced to read that. I wasn't forced to read any particular book in high school literature classes. They always gave us a selection that we could pick. I think I picked one of the picks. You could have read, I think, Gone with the Wind. No, I think I read 1984 instead. Yes, Three Musketeers is absolutely during the reign of the Sun King Louis XIV. Or at least parts of it are. So that I knew. Favorite Middle Ages movie is Kingdom of Heaven, according to Mark Hodgkinson. My favorite medieval movie. So straight medieval movie. That's not like a fantasy movie, right? Or a Robin Hood, or based on some other mythological cycle or quasi-historical characters. Good question. In the Name of the Rose is really good. As long as you watch the extended version of Kingdom of Heaven, I think it's very good. I didn't hate El Cid, but like I said, I don't like. Perfidious Albion. I picked that up, but I think I had Dennis Hopper in my head instead. Actually, the best Three Musketeers is the one with Oliver Reed and Michael York. I completely agree with that. Tim Zales has an HOA meeting to attend. Tim, you really probably want to stay here, but obviously you have to go. So thanks for stopping by. The Crazy Door Gunner. Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of interesting characters in that film. We could talk about that. Vietnam movies, actually. There are several that I need to see. I need to see The Boys and Company C again that I haven't seen in decades. All right, so we are at 10 p.m. So here's what's going on. Buckeye Game Fest next week. If you're coming, let me know and we'll get you in somewhere. There's an event schedule on the website, so check all that out if you are coming. We have an unboxing video of Bonaparte in the Quadrilateral releasing on Thursday. We have the stream with Dan tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and that's on this channel. So there'll be a card up for it in the morning. I might do another unboxing video this week. I'm not sure. I'm trying to get back to doing RPG stuff, but time is just absolutely bananas right now. I'd also like to do Distant Worlds 2 video, which will go on the digital channel, but I'll mention it here on the stream. I'll tell you that they're the Corsican brothers, not medieval, but I don't think it is. I think that's an underrated film, actually. There's some funny stuff in that movie. Yes, there are 4 of them, yes. There's the 3 Musketeers, and there's D'Artagnan. So anyway, topic tomorrow, I don't know. We never come up with the topic until 2 minutes before the show. I always want Dan to come up with the topic, and it's not going to be, what we did last week. So we had a very heavy topic last week, and I'm glad it wasn't just me. We had Kilroy on there as well. That was a big help. So thank you, Kilroy, for helping bail me out of that situation. So, we do drift here. We did a fair amount of topic on medieval, so I never promised that we're going to stick to the topic. We do fairly good. Brant will be at the BGF event on Friday and Saturday, so that will be fantastic. So, anyway, we are done for the evening. So I would like to thank everybody for stopping by. Please do, consider becoming a Patreon and all that. And thanks to everybody who helped out tonight with Super Chats. Thanks to John, who helped get rid of the Russian hookers or whatever the hell was going on there. I'm not sure what was up with that, but that was a thing tonight. So we will remember this show for that reason, if nothing else. What was our number for tonight? It's like we topped out at 118. Also, don't forget that we are approaching relatively rapidly 5,000 subscribers. So we're over 4,900 as of today. I think we tacked on like 10 people today, actually. So when we hit 5,000, there will be a giveaway. I don't know what it'll be. There will probably be a counter clipper involved, to be honest, because I found that it was great. I just plugged your address in and sent it to you that night, and it was done. I was great. I didn't have to put anything in a box or anything. Fantastic. Very efficient. So I'll probably do that again, but we might do some more as well. That's at least a few weeks away, we suspect, but it's probably, at least according to my prognosticator, it's likely to happen this month in April, meaning April. So bear that in mind as well. So stay tuned. We'll have more information on all of that. And again, once again, I'd like to thank everybody for watching tonight. So everybody have a great night. We'll see you all hopefully we'll see many of you tomorrow. Carl, thanks so much for the end of the show. Pacific War to everyone. God, that would be expensive.